Welcome. Good day, my friends. This video is going to be about an artist who maybe some of you have heard of, and his name is Pablo Picasso.
Picasso?
Pablo Picasso?
Is this like a stupid, not even at all funny joke that I just don't get, or what?
What's wrong with Pablo Picasso?
Honey, you gotta be kidding me. We're all way past Pablo Picasso. I mean, come on, get with the program. You claim to be an art channel, but, I mean, the vast majority of us, we're already moved on to, Damien Hirst, Jeff Koons, Basquiat. Even his name is more fun to say than Picasso. Basquiat. Ooh. It has that, feisty French flair. Ooh. Let's be real here, Picasso is so cliche that he's passé. People aren't into Picasso anymore. Picasso is last year old news. Hello.
Can't I just make a video without constantly contending with some weird art snob who lives inside of my head? Saying Picasso is a good artist is like saying AC/DC is a good rock and roll band. Great. Now the unfortunate and depressing art snob from my third video is here.
She's just like depressing, ignore her.
Look, ignore the naysayers. Pablo Picasso left an indelible mark on 20th century art for a number of different reasons. First and foremost, his artwork was groundbreaking. It was revolutionary. He had so many different artistic periods. The Blue period, the Rose period, the Neoclassic period, the Cubist period. Pablo Picasso was a Herculean force in the art world. He created so much art. And even though people may think that his artworks after a certain point were derivative, or after a certain point he stopped putting genuine effort into it and he just kind of started mass producing like any old washed up pop artist, it's really not the case. Aside from the fact that his artworks were super groundbreaking and revolutionary, Pablo Picasso had a ridiculously interesting life.
Look, you don't have to take it from me, but I'm just telling you, if you want to be a hip and with it kinds of art channel, you really can't be doing segments on womanizers.
Sure, among art historians and we, the contemporary people of the land, as Pablo Picasso's legacy goes, he did have sort of an unfortunately exploitive streak when it came to the women. One of Picasso's lovers, Dora Maar, is quoted as having said, "After Picasso, there's only God." Whew. Picasso? Did you do to her? So yeah, Picasso was, as they say, a little bit of a womanizer. That is true. But it would be really disingenuous to oversimplify his life to saying that he lived the life of an artist and a womanizer. That's it. So in this video, I'd like to go over 4 really interesting stories about Picasso. 4 things that happened during the course of his life that maybe can help you understand where the source of my obsession came from. Are you ready? Let's go. Picasso and the Gestapo.
It was early evening on a Monday, the 26th of April in 1937. It was the customary market day in Guernica, and at around 4:30 p.m., when the market was full, the church bell rang out. Cold, clear, reverberating and deadly serious, ricocheting the alarm for approaching airplanes, and the population sought refuge. 5 minutes later, a single Nazi German bomber appeared. It circled over the town at a low altitude, and then it dropped 6 heavy bombs. And thus began an unforgiving bombardment of the Basque town of Guernica, populated at the time by mostly women and children. The men of the town were absent as they were off fighting the Spanish Civil War. The Nazi attack, prompted by the Spanish dictator Franco, was not an attack on the able-bodied soldiers or military factories of the Spanish faction. It was a brutal slaughter of innocents on a town that supported principles that differed from those of the Franco regime. Picasso, while living in his beloved Paris, was commissioned by the Spanish Republican government to create a mural for the Spanish pavilion in the World's Fair that year. Upon reading eyewitness accounts of the bombing atrocity of Guernica, Picasso abandoned his previous theme and created the painting of Guernica, one of the most arresting anti-war paintings in all of history. Picasso remained in Paris during the Nazi occupation of the city, As an artist who deviated from classic techniques, he was considered a member of the degenerate class by the Nazis, and he kept degenerate company as well, which left him a target for frequent harassment by the Gestapo. One evening, as the Gestapo tossed Picasso's apartment, an officer noted a photograph of the painting Guernica. With a contemptuous snarl, the officer flashed the photograph in Picasso's face. "Did you do that?" he asked. "No," Picasso shot back. "You did." "Oh." Now, we have no real way of knowing if this story is in fact or fable. But we do know that Picasso's disdain for the Nazis was no secret, as evidenced by the plays he performed with the likes of Jean-Paul Sartre and Camus, and the fact that he sheltered members of the French resistance to the Nazi occupation. To show such flagrant loathing for the evil of the men who could arrest you or destroy you with impunity is an admirable testament to the character of Pablo Picasso.
Well, I guess if he, stuck it to the Nazis with his art, that's pretty cool, but,
The initiation of Pablo Picasso's Blue Period, Picasso and Casaubon's.
It's turn-of-the-century Paris, and the year is 1900. The seismic center of the art world, Paris was still flickering with the glimmers of the Impressionists while reveling in the dewy and decadent elegance of the blossoming Art Nouveau style, alongside the flashy, reckless colors of the Fauvists and the emboldened brushstrokes of the Post-Impressionists. Picasso and his good friend Charles Casaubon, lured by the gravity of the Parisian art scene, visited the city in September of 1900, where Casaubon fell hopelessly in love with a rather jubilantly promiscuous artist's model and a laundress who went by the name of Germaine. Despite that Germaine was allegedly already married, she seemingly had no scruples allowing Casaubon to romantically court her, though she eventually began to lose patience with him when he seemed unable to consummate their liaison. Noting that Casaubon's mental state was deteriorating rapidly, Picasso took Casaubon back to Barcelona. Without alerting Picasso, Casaubon traveled back to Paris, where he arranged a meeting between himself and 4 others, one of which was Germaine, at the Café Hippodrome. For the final time, Casaubon professed his love for Germaine, only for her to reject him again. He pulled a revolver from his jacket and he fired it directly at Germaine. Believing he had mortally wounded her, he then turned the revolver on himself, placed the gun on his right temple, and pulled the trigger. The public suicide of his friend Casaubon triggered the origin of Pablo Picasso's Blue Period, as well as a long period of abject poverty and extreme depression. His painting, The Death of Casaubon, is done in a style which emulates the post-impressionistic brushstrokes of Vincent van Gogh, and the vantage point of Casaubon reflects the vantage point of Dr. Gachet's drawing of Van Gogh on his deathbed. Each was an artist, both Van Gogh as well as Casaubon, and each died violently of a suicide by gunshot wound. The homage cannot be ignored.
that is so freaking depressing. I just got my falsie. My falsie is just my eye. It's not a tear. Falsie.
This is the story of Picasso and Germaine.
The despair over the public suicide of Casaubon grew like a cancer in Picasso's psyche. He painted portraits of Casaubon in death with Germaine, renditions of El Greco paintings, including Casaubon's, and the monochromatic gloomy blue began to bleed into all of Picasso's works, resulting in a major loss of public interest in his paintings. The fashionable Parisian art galleries weren't into despair. Portraits of blind, emaciated beggars just didn't make for nice decorations. But Picasso wasn't interested. He was consumed, obsessed. He didn't just experience this depression, he began to actively live it. He moved into Casaubon's old apartment, and here he experienced a poverty so extreme that he had to burn his own paintings to stave off the bone-snapping colds of winter. But it wasn't enough for Picasso to inhabit the dead man's apartment. He needed to conquer the woman who had conquered Casaubon. Almost as if Picasso was possessed, haunted to the marrow of his bones by the ghost of Casagemas, he began an intense affair with Germaine. He consummated the relationship in which Casagemas was impotent. Picasso conquered the beauty which defeated Casagemas. Picasso painted Germaine for years, portraits of Germaine as an elegant woman, portraits of Germaine looking listless in the white headdress, symbolizing her as either a prostitute with syphilis or the penitent. The head covering could have meant either. As time wore on, Casagemas's bones became dust, and the affair between Picasso and Germaine cooled into a fond friendship, but the bond between them never failed. Picasso made a point to visit Germaine all of the years of her life at La Maison Rose. Picasso saw through to the end that which had destroyed his friend. Germaine, toothless, emaciated, and plagued by syphilis in her home in 1948. François Gillot, one of Picasso's last loves, has described how, shortly after she went to live with Picasso in 1944, he took her on a special visit to Germaine Picot, who was then toothless and sick, lying in bed. After talking quietly with the old woman for a few minutes, Picasso laid some money on the table and they went out again. Picasso explained to François Gillot that when Germaine was very young, she, quote, was very pretty, and she made a painter friend of mine suffer so much that he committed suicide. A woman once so vivid and beautiful and intoxicating that she drove a man to die was lying alone in 1948, friendless, filthy, hideous, but loved still only by one person. And that was Picasso. She had become Picasso's living vanitas.
Not crying. Not crying. Not crying. Oh, God.
For all of his adult life, Picasso carried a gun. His gun, however, was loaded with blanks, and that is because Picasso was obsessed with pataphysics, which is essentially a philosophy based on sheer absurdity. Pataphysicists were dedicated to enforcing nonsensical bureaucracy and to conducting useless research. For example, one pataphysicist, George Perec, wrote a 300-page novel titled The Void, in which the letter E was completely absent. Pataphysics was like the Dada of philosophy, and Picasso enjoyed it thoroughly. The theory of pataphysics was developed by a French writer named Alfred Jarry, who also spent his life carrying a gun, though Jarry's gun was loaded with bullets and not blanks. In fact, it was Jarry's actual gun that Picasso carried. He acquired the gun after Jarry died in 1907. Jarry's famous pataphysical play, Uber Roy, outlined the belief that Nietzsche's declaration, "God is dead,"
God is dead,
left an epistemological hole in the fabric of the universe, and it was art that needed to fill the void. Picasso used to fire the blanks in his gun at anyone who asked him about the meaning of his paintings. The theory was that if one does not seek their own meaning, then the alternative is death. And that, my friends, is ending on a lighter note.
So I hope that after this video, you'll agree with me that the life of Pablo Picasso is just as interesting as the work of Pablo Picasso.
Okay, fine. I guess Picasso was, like, interesting.
Right, well, I guess sometimes kitsch can be cool. And though it may feel like kind of a cliche to say, I like Pablo Picasso, well, you'd be justified in liking him. There is a reason why he is one of the most famous artists of all time. And I think now that we know that his life was just as legendary as his work, it's easy to understand why. Thank you for watching my video. Thanks for watching my video. Please like and subscribe to my channel. Just like and subscribe. Just like and subscribe. Just press the button. Click. Just like and subscribe. White on white, transparent black tape. Pablo Picasso is dead. Just press the button. Click, 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 click.